Imagine a man who consistently commands attention. He dominates conversations, controls the narrative, and earns the admiration of those around him. For years, this impeccable image seemed to be his greatest strength. But time, always relentless, begins to whisper truths he doesn't want to hear. The compliments become less frequent, the admiring looks give way to indifference, and he finds himself, for the first time, confronted with something he never wanted to face: his own vulnerability. Now here is the question that many avoid. What happens when time begins to carefully unravel the mask that someone has spent a lifetime building? The answer is both straightforward and unsettling. Time is not merely a silent observer, but a catalyst for transformation that spares no one. For those who adopt narcissism as an emotional armor, the impact of time can be even harder to bear. For years, this facade protected deep insecurities and fears that seemed insurmountable. But time has a unique way of revealing cracks in the most well-built walls. And when that happens, it forces an inevitable confrontation with reality. Narcissism is often based on the illusion of control. The belief is that we can avoid judgments, rejections, or failures by manipulating how others perceive us. But aging relentlessly challenges this illusion. No matter how hard we try to control the exterior, aging always reveals the interior. And then we reach the crucial point. How do we react when this mask begins to crack? How do we deal with the parts of ourselves that we have avoided for so long? It is this dilemma that begins our reflection. As we will see, time not only reveals our vulnerabilities, but also provides us with the chance to transform them into something new. But what happens when time begins to expose those masks that hide our deepest vulnerabilities? This is what we will explore next. Write in the comments. Time reveals who we really are, and God protects us. Share this message to reach more people and help them reflect. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Let's go to the video. Narcissism is often like a shiny armor, impressive on the outside, but exhausting on the inside. It functions as a barrier against deep insecurities and the fear of rejection. For the narcissist, this mask is more than a strategy. It is an indispensable protection. However, time, always impartial and inescapable, has the power to corrode even the most solid armors. Over the years, the narcissist learns to use charisma, appearance, and control as tools to maintain their image. It is a constant battle to prevent others from noticing the vulnerabilities hidden beneath the surface. But aging, with its inevitable changes, challenges this illusion of perfection. Physical appearance changes. The achievements that once impressed lose their luster, and the energy needed to maintain the facade begins to diminish. As time passes, the narcissist must confront an inevitable reality: mortality. This awareness brings to the surface long-repressed fears. The feeling of control, which once seemed unshakable, begins to disappear. The incessant search for external validation becomes more difficult, as those who once offered admiration distance themselves or begin to see beyond the mask. Time also exposes the emotional void that often accompanies narcissism. When attention and adulation diminish, the narcissist finds themselves alone with their own thoughts, without the echoes of approval that used to fill the silence. This emotional isolation, amplified by the wear and tear of the mask, forces a reflection. What if all this effort to hide vulnerabilities was, in fact, what drove away the connections he so desperately desired? This weakening of the mask is not just a challenge, it is an opportunity. Time, despite being relentless, offers an invitation to transformation. It shows that it is no longer possible to escape the parts of oneself that have been ignored. But with this truth also comes the possibility of change. The narcissist is faced with a dilemma when these masks begin to fall. Should they confront their vulnerability or remain trapped in the superficiality that isolates them? The decision is inevitable, but what it reveals can be the beginning of something new. As time wears down the masks of narcissism, they reveal a facet that many evade: vulnerability. For the narcissist, showing vulnerability has always been an unacceptable risk. For years, emotional defenses created the illusion of strength while hiding deep insecurities. But time, with its inexorable way of revealing truths, makes it impossible to maintain that facade forever. Vulnerability, contrary to what many believe, is not a sign of weakness. It is an act of courage because it allows us to say, "I am human," with flaws, fears, and needs. For the narcissist, accepting this truth is a monumental challenge. He believed for a significant portion of his life that showing vulnerability would equate to rejection. However, it is precisely in vulnerability that the potential to build real connections resides. As the narcissist starts to remove their emotional shield, they realize that relationships don't require control or external validation. Mutual acceptance of imperfections and the sincere exchange of emotions can build their authenticity. Accepting vulnerability is not easy. It means facing the fear of being judged, admitting mistakes, and allowing others to see what has always been hidden. But this process also brings freedom. This process provides freedom from the need to uphold a perfect image, allowing you to embrace your true self. And with this freedom comes the opportunity to connect with others on a deeper and more meaningful level. The emotional isolation that once seemed inevitable is beginning to give way to something new. The possibility of belonging. Relationships that were once superficial can transform into genuine bonds based on trust and empathy. By accepting their vulnerability, the narcissist realizes they don't have to face everything alone. Opening up to vulnerability is just the beginning. For these new connections to strengthen, more than courage is needed. It is necessary to develop empathy, the ability to understand and validate the emotions of others. Vulnerability is the first step, but to create meaningful bonds, the narcissist needs something more: the practice of empathy. Time begins to disintegrate the defenses of narcissism, creating a new and unexpected space: empathy. For someone who has built much of their identity around emotional barriers, empathy may seem distant, even unnecessary, but in reality, it is the essential foundation for building meaningful relationships and overcoming the isolation that narcissism inevitably brings. Empathy is the ability to see the world through another's eyes, to recognize their pains and joys without judgment. The narcissist may find this practice counterintuitive because it requires them to consider how others feel. However, it is precisely this shift in perspective that begins to transform their interactions. When the narcissist allows empathy to flourish, they discover something they may have never experienced: true connection. It's no longer about control or validation, but about sharing authentic human experiences. Despite its simplicity, this exchange can heal old emotional wounds and pave the way for deeper relationships. The practice of empathy, however, does not arise overnight. It requires conscious effort and a willingness to listen, observe, and feel. This can start with small gestures, such as genuinely paying attention to a conversation or acknowledging someone's difficulty without immediately trying to offer solutions or divert the focus to oneself. These actions convey to the other person a sense of recognition and value, a feeling the narcissist in their journey has seldom encountered or provided. More than benefiting those around them, empathy also transforms the one who practices it. For the narcissist, it offers a new sense of purpose and belonging, replacing the superficiality of past interactions with something deeper and more meaningful. Even with empathy gaining ground, there is often an obstacle that prevents its full expression: the superficiality in relationships. When the narcissist does not overcome this barrier, the connections may still lack the depth necessary for a genuine transformation. Despite the potential of empathy, many narcissists remain trapped in superficial relationships that limit their transformations. If you are enjoying the content, write in the comments: empathy is the first step toward relationships that heal and transform. Share this message to reach more people and strengthen meaningful connections. For many narcissists, life may seem full of interactions and connections. People often surround them, providing them with attention and compliments, that satiate their need for external validation. However, this abundance of relationships is rarely synonymous with depth. Behind the superficial conversations and grand gestures, there is an emotional void that over time becomes impossible to ignore. Superficiality in relationships is a common characteristic of narcissism. Keeping interactions on the surface allows the narcissist to avoid the discomfort of showing their vulnerabilities. By controlling what others see, he protects the parts of himself that he considers fragile or unacceptable. But this protection comes at a high price: the inability to build true and meaningful connections. As time passes, the layers of superficiality begin to show their flaws. The narcissist realizes that, despite being surrounded by people, they still feel a profound loneliness. This loneliness is the direct result of years avoiding depth and authenticity in relationships. When the attention of others diminishes, something that aging often provokes, the emptiness that was once masked becomes inescapable. Time also functions as a mirror, reflecting the impact of the choices made throughout life. Potentially nurturing relationships seem distant, while seemingly solid connections reveal their fragility. For the narcissist, this confrontation with reality can be painful, but it also brings a unique opportunity: the chance to rebuild their relationships in a more authentic way. This reconstruction, however, requires effort. It requires courage to abandon the need for control, a willingness to open up to others, and above all, the acceptance that vulnerability is an essential element of genuine connections. When the narcissist begins to set aside superficiality, they discover that it is possible to create deeper and more meaningful bonds. When the carefully constructed facade of the narcissist begins to crumble under the weight of time, they find themselves faced with a choice: continue trying to maintain an unsustainable image, or allow the cracks to reveal something more authentic. Accepting vulnerability is not the end, but the beginning of a profound process of transformation. This is the moment when a new identity can emerge, free from the shackles of superficiality and emotional defenses. Rebuilding an identity after years of control and self-deception requires courage. It means abandoning old patterns and reevaluating the values that have guided decisions up to this point. The narcissist, accustomed to measuring their worth by external validation, now needs to seek a sense of identity that comes from within. It is a journey of self-discovery, where he learns to accept not only his strengths, but also his imperfections. In this process, time ceases to be an enemy and becomes an ally. It offers the opportunity to reflect on past choices and question what really matters. Who am I without the masks? What do I value beyond admiration and control? These questions, as challenging as they may be, pave the way for a new way of living. Transformation also involves exploring new possibilities. Perhaps this means exploring hobbies, strengthening relationships based on honesty, or even reconnecting with emotions that have been suppressed for so long. This openness to the new is what allows the narcissist to discover that an authentic life, although challenging, is infinitely more rewarding than maintaining a facade. Rebuilding an identity is not just about creating something new, it is also about facing the weight of the past. We cannot ignore the mistakes, the wounds caused, and the missed opportunities. We must acknowledge and process them. And this is where forgiveness comes in as an indispensable component. However, for this reconstruction to be complete, it is necessary to confront the weight of the past through forgiveness. When the narcissist recognizes the emptiness of superficiality, they find themselves facing a unique opportunity to rebuild not only their relationships but also their identity. Forgiveness is a powerful word, but for many, especially the narcissist, it carries a huge weight. After all, forgiving means facing wounds that have often been masked or ignored throughout life. For the narcissist who has spent so much time building defenses against any kind of vulnerability, forgiveness represents a challenge, but also a unique opportunity for liberation and transformation. First, it is important to understand the role that forgiveness plays in the process of emotional healing. For years, The narcissist maintained their mask to hide deep fears, the fear of rejection, of inadequacy, and most importantly, of facing the consequences of their own actions. This mask not only protected his vulnerabilities, but also maintained a cycle of hurts and resentments, both towards others and himself. Forgiving oneself is perhaps the most difficult step. For the narcissist, this means admitting mistakes, acknowledging flaws, and accepting that, behind the facade, there is a human being who also makes mistakes, feels, and needs connection. Often he carries a silent burden of guilt for past actions, hurtful words, and harmed relationships. Without forgiveness, this guilt becomes a burden that hinders growth and true transformation. On the other hand, forgiving others is equally essential. During their life, the narcissist may have felt betrayed, neglected, or treated unfairly. These experiences, real or perceived, fueled their need for control and validation. However, holding on to these grievances only reinforces the cycle of emotional isolation. By forgiving others, he is not justifying their actions, but freeing himself from the influence those wounds have over him. Forgiveness is not an immediate process. It requires time, reflection, and above all, willingness. It is an act of courage, as it means revisiting the past and facing what was painful. But it is also an act of power, as it allows the narcissist to regain control over their emotions and choose a different path for the future. Over time, forgiveness begins to make room for something new, inner peace. Without the weight of guilt and resentments, the narcissist can begin to build a more authentic and meaningful life. He discovers that he doesn't need to be defined by his past actions or the wounds he has carried for so long. Forgiveness also strengthens relationships. When the narcissist forgives themselves and others, they create the foundation for building more genuine and healthy connections. This act of emotional release is what allows him to finally approach people, not for control or validation, but out of a sincere desire for connection. Spirituality often views forgiveness as an act of grace. It is the bridge that allows us to leave the past behind and move toward a future of growth and purpose. For the narcissist, it represents the acceptance of their humanity and the opportunity to reinvent themselves. Finally, forgiveness reveals something essential. Change is not only possible, but within everyone's reach, regardless of where they are on their journey. It reminds us that time is not just an agent of wear, but also an instrument of renewal. With forgiveness as the foundation, the narcissist discovers that change is possible at any moment in life. The idea that change is a privilege of the young is a myth that limits the transformative journey of many. Despite its constant advancement, time not only presents challenges, but also creates new opportunities. Even those who have spent decades protected by a narcissistic facade can find that aging provides the necessary stimulus to reinvent themselves. The potential for change is always present, regardless of age or past choices. As the years go by, the facade built by narcissism begins to lose its effectiveness. What once seemed like an impenetrable shield against vulnerabilities reveals itself to be a barrier that also blocks authenticity and personal growth. For the narcissist, aging can be a powerful catalyst, forcing them to confront issues they have avoided for so long. He confronts human fragility, the transience of life, and ultimately, the need for significant changes. Time offers something precious, the opportunity to reflect. Any age can reflect on the choices that shape the journey. The narcissist may begin to ask themselves, did these decisions really reflect who I am? Or what can I do now to live in a way that is more connected to my true values? These questions do not arise merely from the passage of time, but from the wisdom it brings. Many believe changing means abandoning who they are, but transformation is more about aligning with our goals. For the narcissist, this means accepting that external validation will never be enough to fill the internal void. Change begins when he realizes that authenticity, although challenging, offers a freedom that the facade could never provide. This potential for change at any age is not an abstract theory. It is a truth proven by countless life stories. Think of people who have rediscovered passions, rebuilt relationships, or found new purposes in advanced stages of life. Each of these narratives reminds us that time is not a limit, but a platform for new possibilities. An inspiring example is Anna Mary Robertson Moses, known as Grandma Moses, who began painting at the age of 78. At an age when many believe change is unattainable, her art gained global recognition. She is living proof that it is never too late to explore new horizons. Science also supports this perspective. Studies on neuroplasticity show that the human brain retains the ability to learn and adapt at all ages. This means that even those who have spent a large part of their lives trapped in narcissistic patterns have the potential to create new emotional and behavioral pathways. Transformation, however, requires effort. It requires the willingness to abandon old habits and beliefs that no longer serve. This can be uncomfortable, especially for someone used to protecting themselves behind a facade. However, the emotional freedom that comes with change outweighs the initial discomfort. Moreover, change doesn't have to be grand to be meaningful. Small steps, such as learning to listen without judgment, admitting mistakes, or simply allowing oneself to be vulnerable, can have a profound impact. Every intentional choice fortifies the emerging path. Another crucial aspect of the potential for change is the connection with others. The narcissist, by relinquishing the need for control, can begin to build relationships based on trust and empathy. These bonds, although different from the superficial connections of the past, offer a depth and authenticity that once seemed unattainable. The change also brings benefits that go beyond the individual. When the narcissist chooses to transform, they positively influence those around them. Friends, family, and colleagues begin to notice the difference in their interactions, and this can inspire them to seek their own changes. It's a cycle of impact that begins with a single act of courage, the decision to change. Finally, it is essential to recognize that growth has no endpoint. Transformation is a continuous process, a journey that accompanies us as we live. For the narcissist, accepting this truth means understanding that each moment brings a new opportunity to learn, evolve, and reconnect with themselves and others. And as the narcissist embraces this change, they begin to realize that growth has no endpoint, but is a continuous process that enriches every phase of life. Personal growth is a process that accompanies us throughout our entire lives. For the narcissist, who has spent much of their time hidden behind masks and emotional defenses, growth is more than an opportunity for transformation. It is a call to reconnect with their essence and find authenticity in a world they have tried so hard to control. When the narcissist begins to accept the changes that time brings, they realize something liberating. True strength is not in hiding their weaknesses, but in acknowledging them and working with them. This means abandoning the need for constant validation and allowing oneself to explore who they truly are, without the restrictions imposed by the facade. This journey of growth does not happen in a linear way. It is filled with ups and downs, moments of progress and setbacks. However, every step taken, no matter how small, is an important milestone. For the narcissist, celebrating small victories is essential. Admitting a mistake, genuinely listening to someone close, or simply allowing oneself to be vulnerable are achievements that once seemed impossible, but now represent real progress. The pursuit of personal growth also involves finding a greater purpose. The narcissist, by letting go of their obsession with control and recognition, may begin to ask themselves, how can I contribute to something beyond myself? This type of questioning helps him redirect his energy toward actions and relationships that have a positive and meaningful impact. Another fundamental component of this process is the support of communities that value genuine connections. When the narcissist surrounds themselves with people who accept them for who they are and not who they appear to be, they find a safe environment to continue growing. These communities can include spiritual groups, close friends, or even mentors who encourage authenticity and continuous growth. Time, which once seemed like an adversary becomes a valuable ally. It teaches lessons that only experience can offer and reminds the narcissist that it is never too late to change. Each day brings the chance to learn something new, to correct past mistakes, and to get closer to what truly matters. Moreover, embracing personal growth means accepting that perfection is unattainable, and that's okay. Instead of seeking an impeccable image, the narcissist learns to value authenticity. He discovers that being human means being imperfect, and those imperfections are what make us unique and connected to one another. Along this journey, the narcissist also discovers an important truth. Growth is not just about oneself, but also about the impact one can have on others. When he decides to grow, his transformation influences those around him. Friends and family notice the change, feel inspired, and often begin their own journeys of growth. This cycle of positive impact is what makes personal growth so powerful. It not only improves the life of the narcissist, but also creates a wave of transformation that spreads beyond themselves. Finally, personal growth is a journey that never ends. There will always be new challenges to face, new lessons to incorporate, and new ways to connect with the world. A narcissist sees each day as an opportunity to be more authentic, connected, and true to themselves. With time as an ally, the narcissist can finally connect with their essence and create a more authentic and meaningful life. Throughout this reflection, we have seen how time acts not only as a silent observer, but as an agent of transformation for those who spend their lives hidden behind narcissistic masks. The exposure of these carefully hidden vulnerabilities challenges the narcissist to drop their defenses and face their true essence. Time, though relentless, offers something precious: the opportunity to change. It shows that the masks that protected the narcissist do not need to define who they are. Aging, far from being a sentence, can be the catalyst for a more authentic life, full of meaningful connections and real values. By accepting vulnerability, the narcissist discovers that their weaknesses are not enemies, but gateways to true relationships. Empathy emerges as a powerful tool for building these connections, while forgiveness, both of oneself and others, offers the necessary freedom to leave the past behind. More than an external transformation, personal growth is a reunion with the essence. It is a continuous process where every small step matters. With time as an ally, the narcissist can rebuild not only their relationships but also their identity. He learns that authenticity, although challenging, is infinitely more liberating than the facade he maintained for so long. Time is not the enemy of the narcissist. It is the master that reveals hidden truths and opens doors to authenticity. Time offers the opportunity to emerge as a more authentic version of oneself, even for those who have spent years concealed behind masks. How will you use time to transform your life and connect with your essence? What steps can you take today to start this journey? Remember, it is never too late to change, and time, despite its impartiality, will always be in your favor when you decide to embrace authenticity. Until the next video, thank you.